Hello, class. Want to present to you another lecture here about selecting topics and developing good specific purpose statements to create, targeted, specific, relevant, and interesting speech topics, especially as you this week are submitting your topics for approval by me on the persuasive speeches. So just as a heads up, you are submitting your 5 objectives: general purpose, specific purpose, central idea, rhetorical question, and keyword for your persuasive speech to the discussion forum. And then I'm going to reply to that. And if you get a one-word reply from me that says approved, then good job. You got it on the first try. A lot of you, if history is any indication of what will happen this go round, a number of you will get a revise and resubmit response from me. It'll need some tweaking. But if you watch this video first and put into practice the principles and guidelines that I'm going to present here, then chances are you'll get it right on the first try. Now, I just want to disclaimer real quickly. This is a lecture that I pulled out of my files, and I haven't updated it since I was teaching in Louisiana. So some of the examples have to do with Louisiana, but they'll relate here to Tennessee as well. The principles are the same. So here we go. So what I'm doing is showing you an example here of a specific purpose, and some will be informative, some will be persuasive. And as I bring these up, I want you to be thinking to yourself, is this an example of a good specific purpose statement, or does it need some work? So this first one: to inform my audience about poverty issues around the world. Good? Not good. I'm going to go with not good. All right. So, and the reason why is you want to avoid topics that have an indefinite reference point, right? Around the world. That's too broad. It needs a narrower focus. You need to focus on, Middle Tennessee, or an area close by. You may hear my dogs barking. I'm recording this from home, and they are seeing something outside the window. Somebody's delivering a package or something. So, but the point is this problem is too big. It's too abstract. It's too overwhelming. I mean, what can I do to solve poverty issues around the world? But instead, if I pick a local nonprofit, for example, that's trying to do something about poverty in my area, then I could focus my speech on that. In an informative speech, I could let my audience know about some different food banks, some different organizations that try to give food to people in need. Or I could try to persuade people to donate canned goods, or to donate their time by volunteering at a food shelter. All right? Here comes the next one. To persuade my audience to end world hunger. What do you think about that one? Try to move my video here okay. To persuade my audience to end world hunger. What's the problem here? Similar to the first one, right? It's too broad in scope. All right? So around the world in the first one was kind of indefinite, and this one's talking about we want to solve a worldwide problem. Okay? So again, instead, what we want to do is focus on a local application of that, right? Give us something specific. So to persuade my audience to sign up at a local food bank at least once during the fall semester. All right, that's something everyone could do and could contribute to the goal of, having less people in the world who are hungry. All right. To persuade my audience to dream big dreams. All right, you want to be the next, you know, Tony Robbins or T.D. Jakes or Joel Osteen or whatever, right? An inspirational, motivational speaker. And I can appreciate that sentiment. I like to preach and, you know, give speeches on, you know, being all you can be and not being limited by your own doubts and self-beliefs and all those things. That's good. But in this case, particularly for a class in speech class, to persuade my audience to dream big dreams, the issue with that is it's altruistic, it's generic, right? It's too vague. What does it mean to dream big dreams? Okay. And instead, what could you do? Let's say you're wanting to go into, maybe you want to go into social work. Maybe mental health is a big concern of yours. And so what you're wanting to do is try to help people overcome self-doubt and believe in themselves, self-efficacy. So what you could do is you could do a problem solution here speech. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is self-doubt. The problem is not believing in myself that I'm capable of accomplishing some goal. So then what would be a solution to that, to overcome that self-doubt? Well, maybe it's this: to persuade my audience to overcome self-doubt by practicing meditation for 10 minutes a day. There's research in journals that have been published in journals of psychology, right? Cognitive behavior, that show that people who meditate, who focus on clearing their mind and then focusing on positive things, are able to accomplish more, to have higher self-esteem, self-efficacy beliefs, and to not have as much self-doubt. So there you go, a problem solution that gives something concrete for people to act on. To inform my audience about high school partying. All right. And I meant to say, these are all examples of specific purpose statements that students have actually submitted to me. All right. So I've not made these up. These are actual specific purpose statements that students have proposed. Okay. And so here, this student, you know, what the student was wanting to do was to talk about, you know, high-risk behaviors, to talk about, you know, young people engaging in excessive drinking, drugs, sex, those sorts of things. That's what the student meant by to inform my audience about high school partying. What's the problem with giving this speech in a college class? Well, hello, it's irrelevant. We're not in college anymore. I mean, we're not in high school anymore. Okay, so what you need to do is find a way to marry your concern, what you're passionate about, what you want to talk about, but to the right age group, to the right audience. So do this instead, to talk about dangerous trends in drug use on college campuses in the US. There you go. You get to talk about the topic that you want to talk about, but in a way that's relevant and interesting for the audience. To inform my audience on the importance of eating healthy. Okay. Avoid the "I've heard that all my life" topics. And with this, I mean, what else would go here? Eating healthy. Did you know that if you exercise, it's good for you? Dog, no, man, are you kidding me? So just these things that everybody already knows, right? Let's avoid that, because that's going to be boring. So in this case, however, let me back up. What I want to do is not squelch someone's passion about a topic. So in this case, the person cares about nutrition, right? They care about health. That's good. So it's not, the topic isn't bad. It's the approach to the topic. So instead, find something more specific within that topic, right? To inform my audience of the pros and cons to buying organic produce. okay? Instead of this abstract idea of the importance of eating healthy, give us something specific, something that's maybe a little controversial, right? That you can provide the information on. In this case, it would be an informative speech, but if you wanted to just talk about the advantages of growing and eating your own organic produce, then that would be a persuasive speech, right? Okay, so when I created this lecture, I was in South Louisiana, and there are a lot of duck hunters in South Louisiana, and there are a lot of other kinds of hunters in Middle Tennessee, right? A lot of people who deer hunt and turkey hunt and squirrel hunt and all these kinds of things. So you can apply it to something else. But in this case, somebody wanted to give an informative speech on how to build a duck blind. All right, what's a duck blind? For those of you who don't know, it's something that you build a little enclosure, right, that you can sit in and be camouflaged and look and wait for the ducks to come, and then, you know, lift your gun up and shoot them. And so this person wanted to give a speech on how to build a duck blind. Well, what's the issue with that? Okay. You want to avoid topics that are niche, that don't apply to a diverse audience, right? I would guess that in any audience of size, you've got half of the people who will never duck hunt in their life, don't care anything about duck hunting, much less want to know how to build a duck blind, right? You're going to have some people who, you know, morally are opposed to hunting and whatnot as well. So they're not going to want to know how to build a duck blind. Okay, that's just not helpful, useful information for the audience. But you love duck hunting. You're passionate about duck hunting. I'm not going to poo-poo on that topic, all right? So let's find a way where you can still talk about something that you're passionate about, but in a way that everyone has an incentive to listen. Because if you tell me, you know, some people, for anyway, if you tell them, today I'm going to talk about how to build a duck blind, well, they're just going to be like, click. They're going to turn you off because they have no interest in that at all. But could you talk about duck hunting in a way that gives everybody an incentive to listen? Well, you could if you were in South Louisiana, right? To inform my audience how duck hunting supports the economy of South Louisiana. And you might do the same with a different type of hunting, deer hunting or squirrel hunting or whatever in Middle Tennessee. Talk about the impact on the community, right? On the economics, right? When you think about how many people come to an area to hunt, they buy license, which bring money to the people who sell them and tax revenue to the state. They buy supplies, they maybe stay in hotels, right? We're talking about multi-million dollars. And so whether you like to hunt, hate hunting, or whatever, this is information that is relevant and it impacts you, right? Because you live in an area that economically is impacted by it. To persuade my audience that Jesus Christ can save or can change their lives, okay? We want to avoid religious proselytization topics, okay? We're in a college class, we're not at church. And so regardless of your faith system, your belief system, we're not here to try to convert people. Okay, it's not about ideology or philosophy in these speeches. What we're wanting to do is to focus on problems in society that need correcting, right? Problems and solutions and reasons why we need to change how we act in certain ways. And so we don't want, you know, we don't want sermons. We don't want you know, religion, persuasive topics on religion, trying to convert anybody to any type of religion in class. But you care about religion. Religion's important to you and its role in society. I get that. That's fine. So we can talk about issues that involve religion and society, religion and politics, and that interplay. And so an example might be if you want to persuade the audience that churches either should be required to pay taxes or should remain nonprofit, and all the billions of dollars that are collected by churches and donations every year should or should not be taxed by the government. All right, so there you could talk about, you have a way of talking about something that's important to you, but in a way, again, that gives everybody an incentive to listen. You see, even if someone is an atheist, right, this is a topic that would be of interest to them. To inform my audience on why they should vote. Okay, what's the issue with this? Okay, it's the wrong general purpose. This is not an informative speech, it's a persuasive speech. All right? So instead, to inform my audience of the pros and cons of voter ID laws. Okay? Or if you wanted to do it as a persuasive, right? I don't want anybody to do a persuasive speech on why we ought to vote. Okay? Because that's an overdone topic. We all know we need to vote. It's important. Okay? But if you want to take an issue around the idea of voting, okay, to persuade my audience that the electoral college system should be eliminated, right? To persuade my audience that everyone at the age of 18 should be automatically registered to vote. You know, something like that would be okay. Or something on this issue of, you know, gerrymandering of districts, right? If you don't know what gerrymandering is, then let me just say Google it and look at it, because it's a huge problem, and it's a way that primarily conservative Republican politicians have sliced up states and counties within them so that they exclude demographics of people, i.e. minorities, who tend to vote Democratic, so that they can stay elected. So you could pick some kind of issue, a problem and a solution, right, related to this topic. All right. To persuade my audience that Popeyes makes the best fried chicken. And I put this under the who cares, so what topic. But really, I could make this about, I could say that the problem with this is it's an opinion. And you want to avoid topics that are just about playing one opinion against another, because opinions are just opinions and everyone's is valid. And so you can't really persuade somebody to give up their opinion and accept your opinion when at the end of the day, there's nothing at stake. It's just an opinion, okay? But, I mean, you're about, let's say that, you know, you work in the fast food service industry, or you just love, you know, fried chicken or whatever, and you're passionate about it, and that's what you want to talk about. Okay. And I had a student who did this, right? These are actual student proposals, right? And so what I did with this student, I said, okay, well, let's think about in what ways are any kind of fried chicken franchise involved in some kind of social issue in the United States, right? And at that time, there was a big controversy, right, about Chick-fil-A. And I know a lot of you eat at Chick-fil-A. There's always a long line at the student center on campus. But at the time I said, okay, well, why don't you take Chick-fil-A and persuade us that we either should or should not boycott Chick-fil-A because of, you know, it's no secret that the owners, the founder and the family who owns Chick-fil-A are, you know, people who are very public about their Christian faith and their views, their social views related to that. And a few years back, there was an not undercover, but just an investigation of the corporation and the donations that the corporations made. And of course, being devout Christians of a particular viewpoint, the owners of Chick-fil-A donated money to a lot of, religious Christian causes, some of which were about, trying to prevent the LGBT community from having, their rights. All right. So that's a way where you could talk about, you're able to talk about the fast food industry, a fried chicken franchise, but in a way that, somebody like me who's mostly vegan, I care about this topic. I'm never going to eat at Chick-fil-A. I might get some fries, but I'm not going to eat the chicken. But yet this is a topic, I would be interested in listening to. To inform my audience how my mother inspired me through her battle against breast cancer. Okay. Look, y'all all know I have a daughter who has breast cancer. My mother is a breast cancer survivor. So I'm not in any way wanting to minimize the inspiration that we might get from people who battle cancer and overcome it, or how they touch our lives, or whatever. But the issue with the way this one is worded, right, is this is a tribute topic, right? It's really not an informative speech, right? It's the wrong general purpose. This is just a speech where you're paying tribute to someone. You're not really informing the audience of information that they can take and use in their life. But what you could do, however, you want to be able to talk about your mother, the cancer, and all those things, right? It's not the topic, it's the way you're approaching the topic. So how can we approach this topic in a way that allows you, to honor your mother in the way that you're wanting to, by being able to share her story, but within a speech with a central idea that is going to be more applicable? Well, one of the things you could do is kind of a problem solution speech, if you wanted to go persuasive on it, of the problem of cancer, breast cancer. Then you want to get to the cause, what's causing it. And there are lots of different things that cause cancer, but you might focus on a specific thing that causes cancer and then give a solution, which would be where I'm going with this suggestion: to inform my audience of the link between consuming animal protein and cancer. And I have an image here of Forks Over Knives, which is a documentary that if you've not seen, I recommend you look it up. It's the narrator is it's quite boring, and the narrator talks like this in a monotone, boring way, but the facts, the information in it are great. And but anyway, there are lots of not to get on one of my soapboxes here, but I am a little bit. There is a very clear link, especially between consuming dairy, animal protein in the form of dairy, and increase in cancer. And so it would be a creative way that you could bring in a topic related to cancer, and be able to tell the story about, your family member, but in the context of a topic that is engaging, that's somewhat controversial, and that gives people an incentive to listen. To persuade my audience that shaking a baby is wrong. There's actually a diagnosed condition called shaken baby syndrome, and it's a condition that babies get when they've been shaken too violently by an angry person holding them. But what's the issue with this as a persuasive speech? Avoid shadow boxing topics. Do I really need to persuade you that shaking a baby is wrong? If somebody thinks it's okay to take a baby and go, stop, shut up, you little thing, you, they don't need a speech on the topic. They need, to be locked up, to be medicated or whatever. So a couple of ways you could go with this, right? you care about child welfare. So maybe you give a speech on, as parents, how you can practice anger management techniques so that you don't in any way, take your anger and frustrations out on your children. That might be one way. The example I gave here for a persuasive speech, to persuade my audience that parents of obese children should be charged with child abuse. Wow. I mean, that would be controversial, wouldn't it? I mean, you would have people split. But okay, where's the parent's responsibility? You've got a pantry in your kitchen stocked full of, sugary cereal and donuts and chips and macaroni and cheese and all other kind of junk food, and you get them 10 Happy Meals a week, and then you wonder why they're obese, right? So maybe we ought to hold parents accountable for allowing their kids to become obese and have health problems as a result of that. Obviously, this is a topic that you would have to give a disclaimer about people with certain genetic predispositions and health conditions, and kids that take steroids are going to, in many cases, swell up and be overweight, but because of the steroids and the fluid retention and those sorts of things. So it would have to be nuanced, but this is definitely a speech that everybody, I think, would have an incentive to listen, have a strong opinion about, and you could give a good speech on, and it's in the area of child welfare, right? To inform my audience that the Holocaust was a hoax. All right. In general, let me just say I would avoid conspiracy theories in your speeches, right? Did Paul McCartney really, die and get replaced in the Beatles? That's a popular one that students would want to give a speech about. And you just think about some of these crazy conspiracy theories of late, like 9/11 was a hoax. It was or not a hoax, but an inside job, that it was really orchestrated by the government, or that the Sandy Hook school shooting really didn't happen. These kinds of conspiracy theory things that are just fringe and to be avoided and given a speech to a diverse audience. They're just too polarizing, and in many cases, just ridiculous. And at the outset, you're going to be discredited for trying to present those points. In this case, to inform my audience that the Holocaust was a hoax, I say avoid ethnocentrism in your topics. And the reason why I use this is because you will not find a single credible scholar, historian, who would support the notion that the Holocaust never happened. You will find some ultra-white, right-wing, white nationalist Nazi sympathizers who will espouse some sort of conspiracy theory, and a few who've written books about it, right? But it's baloney. It's hogwash, as we would say in Arkansas. So don't try to give a speech on something like this. It's going, not only is it ridiculous, but it's just downright offensive, right? But let's say you are into conspiracy theories, okay? You could find one that doesn't, it doesn't involve the loss of life. It doesn't have the pathos of something like 9/11 was an inside job, or the Sandy Hook school shooting really didn't happen. I mean, those things are just crazy. And for all the victims, such opening, has the effect of just opening the wounds and pouring salt in them, and it's just highly offensive. But I mean, did we really or really not land on the moon, right? Was that a hoax? Well, you could give an informative speech about, arguments for and against the actual factual landing on the moon. I don't think anybody's going to be morally offended if you argue we really, that was government propaganda in the Cold War against the Nazis, against the Soviets. At the end of the day, some people may think, you are misinformed or something like that, but they're not going to be morally offended as they would with some of these other conspiracy theories that involve, people, ethnic groups, and loss of life. All right. So there you have it, just about a dozen or so tips as you think about selecting your topics, and I look forward to seeing them in the discussion forum. And until next time, I'm going to stop recording here. Y'all take care, be safe, and shelter in place.